Welcome everyone to this webinar on how to grow your industrial tech startup beyond the prototype. I'm happy to see many of you today joining the session and see that you're coming from all over the place, all over Europe. You're coming from Germany, from UK, from Norway, from Italy, from Israel, Andorra. So this is fantastic. Let's do that. Let's use the chat in order to interact with each other. And also we have another tool, which is the Q&A section. You can leave your questions there. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Oriol Pascual. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Stage 2, a venture-backed acceleration program for early-stage industrial tech ventures. And the dynamics of today's session are going to be the following. So this is going to be roughly a 1-hour webinar presentation. We have the chat, as I mentioned, and it will be great to interact and to get to know each other a little bit there. I may throw some questions as we are going along. Also, if you have specific questions about the program or about things that we're explaining today, there is a Q&A area on the Zoom where you can leave those questions. We will appreciate that you use the chat to interact and say hi and leave comments. But if you have specific questions that you want to be solved, to use the Q&A, because by doing so, we can quickly find the questions and then go through them. And our goal is that at the end of the presentation, we are going to review these questions and try to answer as many as possible. Also, many of you, when you sign up, you already send us some questions in advance, so we made a selection of those. So please use the chat to interact and to connect with each other, but also use the Q&A section to leave your questions. At the end of this webinar, you are going to receive an email with a PDF that includes a very detailed description of Stage 2 acceleration program, includes a very detailed description of the conditions in which Stage 2 is accepting ventures and that we engage with ventures. So many things that probably are not going to be covered today here are going to be included in this, I believe, some 60-page, very visual document, but also very, very detailed. So you're going to receive this email, and in the same email, this is going to be sent by Miriam Segura, which is the Stage 2 Acceleration Program Director. She's going to make sure that you get this email with this document, and also she's going to offer the opportunity to have a one-to-one conversation in order to clarify questions later on. So at the end of this session, we're going to answer questions openly, but you're going to get a document with lots of information, and also you will have the chance to book a lot of time for a one-on-one meeting in order to further develop some of these questions. So we designed this session to help science and engineering-based hardware startups get an idea of what it takes to grow your venture beyond the prototyping phase. And how you're going to do that? First of all, we're going to cover what is industrial tech. I'll give you a brief description or a definition of what it is. Then we're going to compare industrial tech versus digital tech. We tend to connect entrepreneurship with the dynamics of digital services, and hardware-based and science-based startups are very different than those. So we're going to see in which way they are different. Then we're going to tackle the 4 main challenges that early-stage industrial tech ventures are going to confront at a specific moment, and how to overcome those. So we're going to do that. We're going to help you how to overcome those. And finally, we're going to briefly introduce the Stage 2 acceleration program and how actually we design a program which the ultimate goal is to overcome those challenges and go to the next level. So that's a bit, but before maybe explaining what is industrial tech, I think it makes sense that since we're going to spend some time together, that I introduce myself. So I've been supporting science-based startups since 2007, I believe. In fact, I've been designing and running incubation and acceleration programs all over Europe since 2007. And always I've been doing that for different organizations, like it could be foundations or technical universities, or it could be even public organizations and municipalities. But it's been lately, 2 years ago, that after providing support directly to more than 200 engineering-based startups and building, well, kind of a experience of what does it take to grow science and engineering-based startups, and also realizing that industrial tech, it's growing as a field, and the opportunities in this sector are growing exponentially, that I decided to launch Stage 2. So actually, Stage 2 is an initiative that I promote myself, but it's co-founded together with 9 other entrepreneurs with long-standing track record setting up high-tech industrial companies. And together, our goal actually is to contribute to make a more competitive Europe by helping develop high-tech startups. So the Stage 2 is a unique program that helps hardware startups with proprietary technology go from the prototype to the first industrial series. But we can talk a bit more about this later. So what's industrial tech? So at the Stage 2, we define industrial tech as hardware with IP and with a focus on B2B. So what does it mean? So hardware, basically, we all understand what does it mean. It's about having an artifact. It's about having a device. But for us, what is very important is that is any company that in order to provide a value proposition, they require manufacturing. They require to take inputs and transform into outputs. And there are many reasons of why we think this is important, but mainly is that those economies that they have a strong manufacturing and industrial sector are economies that are very competitive. So we want to contribute to that. So an industrial tech company, it's hardware-based, but we need to realize that high tech and high added value startups that are hardware-based, nowadays, those are intelligent hardware companies. This is hardware that it has connectivity, that it has sensors, that it has intelligence. So at the end of the day, and this is something that has been coming in the questions from your side, and then also you can let me know, but most of the high-tech hardware industrial startups today, they all have a layer of software, intelligence, sensors, connectivity. And one can even argue that the innovation may be not so much on the hardware part, but more on the digital side. And you need this embodiment in a hardware component, like can be a robot, it can be a device that actually takes a sample and converts into something. You may need this hardware component to deliver that digital innovation to a certain place. In any case, industrial tech tends to be intelligent hardware. So those are companies also that they have a proprietary technology. So IP, meaning intellectual property. And that's important for a couple of reasons. So this is about innovativeness. That's about not so much repeating what others have been doing, but typically these kind of ventures come out of R&D units. They come out of research centers, technology centers, maybe the R&D unit of a company. So they are science-based, they're engineering-based. They come out of a process of developing a new science, a new technology. And that as a consequence, it means that it's innovative, but also it means that it's an entry barrier. It means that it can be protected, and it means that it's going to be difficult for others to replicate and to take over that kind of market and value proposition. So that's why IP is important. And finally, at least from the perspective of Stage 2, we define industrial tech as companies that they are B2B. That means business to business. And well, there is a reason for that. And at the end of the day, from a business management perspective, it's very different to sell to other businesses, to have as a client other businesses, that to have as a final client the end consumer. So it's not the same to develop a robotic arm for pick and place, if you want, that is going to be used in a line, and your final customer is another industrial company, that to develop maybe a set of headphones that actually you have to distribute it through retail channels and maybe online channels and so on and so forth. So value propositions have different take, distribution channels are different distribution channels, economics are other economics. So in our case, we're focusing on B2B. And so it's clear, on a way, we define industrial tech as hardware with IP on B2B, but that's transversal to a variety of sectors. And as long as there is a device and it's manufacturing and it has a proprietary technology, that's interesting. But to put a bit of order, we can talk about sectors like medical devices. In fact, we have quite some experience ourselves in stage 2 giving support to medical devices that can be diagnostic devices, or it can be surgical equipment, or we are talking also about wearables that are measuring different health constants. But industrial tech has a lot to do also with robotics and automatization. As I mentioned before, we are talking maybe about robotic arms for pick and place, or it can mean AGVs, so platforms for warehouses to move objects around. It's also about agrotech and food tech. We had examples in the past of vertical farming in order to produce greens and vegetables using 95% less water than traditional agriculture and without any kind of pesticides, and do that thanks to technology and thanks to a hardware infrastructure. But it also means maybe sensors applied on the field in order to make an efficient use of natural resources when growing vegetables on the field. Another sector that may be touched by industrial tech is clean tech. This is about new ways to produce and store energy, but also ways in order to make an efficient use of energy, and also of water. Why not? Or even about end of life of residues and waste. How do we convert used materials into new materials? And finally, another sector that can include another vertical, it's mobility, and new forms to move people and move things around. So as you can see, industrial tech touch many verticals, but one thing is clear is that industrial tech, it's very different than digital tech. We tend to connect entrepreneurship to digital tech. We tend to think of entrepreneurship as the dynamics that come with digital services and digital technologies, and it makes sense. At the end of the day, entrepreneurship as such, we can talk about entrepreneurship as the fact that how to develop and how to validate a business idea and do it in a methodological way. That's a rather new concept. At the end of the day, entrepreneurship is a rather new approach to creating and building businesses. Till maybe some 20 years ago, someone that was successful building a business, we had this idea that it was about someone being in the right place at the right time and being gifted in order to make it happen. Later on, we realized that, well, there is a method, there is methodology, there is a way to do it systematically in order to reduce risk and in order to accelerate the process. When we found about this way to do it, this came pretty much along with the development of digital technologies and new business models around the digital technologies. So on a way, we tend to think of entrepreneurship as anything related to digital, but industrial tech companies are very different. And I would like to point some of the differences. The value proposition is completely different. Typically, digital startups, they are service-based. They provide a service. They help people find things. They help connect people and buy things and rent things, compare things. So they tend to be a service. Meanwhile, industrial tech companies are hardware-based. The value proposition is hardware-based. Distribution channels are also very different. You can distribute digitally when you're a digital startup, but in industrial tech world, you need to put things in pallets, in boxes. You have to move them in trucks. So it's about physical channels. Scalability in industrial tech is limited by physics, while in the digital world, to produce new units and to distribute new units is basically free, and scalability, therefore, it's very high. And development cycles in industrial tech are way shorter than digital tech. So it takes time to develop a product, to validate that the technology is working, and to make adjustments to that. And I think something important for those attending this webinar is about what kind of support do you receive. So at the end of the day, there is a very mature entrepreneurship ecosystem around digital tech companies. So wherever you are from, we saw that there is people from all over Europe, even from Israel, joining us today. I'm convinced that wherever you're located, there are incubation programs, acceleration programs, there are investors, they can be formal, informal investors, business angels. There are programs from your local government providing support to entrepreneurship, but I'll bet that 99% of those programs are pretty much oriented to digital services startups. And that means that it's a very mature ecosystem. We know how to do it, and many people can help out there. That's not the case for industrial tech startups. For industrial tech startups, actually, there is not such a mature ecosystem. There are very few players around that can provide support. In fact, Stage 2 is one of the very few programs internationally that is providing support to hardware startups, and maybe we can count, there is probably like a dozen worldwide doing so. That's changing. It's changing very quickly. We are seeing more players, especially investing in industrial tech. We are seeing more programs around supporting industrial tech companies, but still it's far from the maturity of other sectors like the digital. Finally, maybe to talk a bit about funding. How do we fund these kind of ventures? Well, industrial tech ventures, you need money in industrial tech ventures in early stages, mainly for technological development, and also mainly in order to validate the technology and for manufacturing purposes. In early stage digital companies, there is another use. Actually, you are going to need money probably to grow the user base, and later on realize if there is how can you capture value. So, but what does it take to grow industrial tech startups? So we can look a little bit at the different stages that industrial tech startup or science-based, engineering-based startup has to go through during their life. And I think a good way to look at this is the TRL scale. This means technology readiness level. Maybe some of you are familiar with the concept. This is a scale that NASA developed in early 70s. And the goal of that scale was to rate different technologies on the degree of maturity. So if we are putting a new technology in a satellite or in a mission to go, for instance, to the moon, to understand if the technology we are putting in is being validated and it's mature enough, or it's a new technology that still needs development. So that scale, it goes from 1 to 9, TRL 1, TRL 1, 9. And I will say TRL 1 is basically you have an idea, you have an initial concept, and you take some notes on that. A TRL 9 will be that it's a product that is being launched to the market and it's been matured through several versions of that product. So you have second and third version of the product. So from TRL 1 to TRL 4 is what we call stage 1. And TRL 4 will be validating a new technology in a controlled environment. So basically, you develop a new set of technology, name it a sensor, name it a new way to store and to manage energy, and you being able to validate that it works, but you've been doing so in a controlled environment. You did that in the lab, in the workshop, so under perfect conditions. At that, in that initial stage is what we call the research stage or the technological development stage. Typically, it happens within research groups. This is not so much a company, a startup, but it's more a group which focuses R&D. And from an investment perspective, we can call this a pre-seed stage. So there is no company set up yet, just some initial ingredients. So we can call this pre-seed. The second stage is what we call stage 2, and maybe that gives you a hint of why we are called the way we are called. And that will roughly go from TRL4 to TRL6. So TRL4 will be this technology validated in a controlled environment. TRL5 will be a technology validated with a functional prototype in a real environment. So you took that technology out to the real world. Conditions are not perfect conditions, and you demonstrate that this works. And a TRL6 will be a first industrialized series. Even it could be small units, it could be 10 units, it could be 50 units if you want, but it's not so much something done on an artisan way, but this is something done on an industrialized way, so already taken to the industrialization phase. In this second phase, typically, we have the company is being incorporated, the company is being set up. So here is where the startup is born. There is a VAT number, is a tax number, it's being registered as a company. And the focus is not so much to develop a new technology and do R&D, as it's more about building a product on top of the technology. So how can we use this technology to build a product that has a proper value proposition that others find useful, and start building the company, building the startup. From an investment perspective, we call this the seed stage. But also, most probably, companies at that level, they are also what we call pre-revenue. So they may have an initial first version of a product, but not first sales yet. The third stage is what we call the growth stage. So basically, when you reach TRL6, several conditions should be met, or at least that's the goal, what we are looking for, and that's what we are going to talk a bit later on. But once you have a first industrialized series, and once you have the market validated because you did your first sales, and someone is being willing to pay for your product or your service, maybe you have a service based on a product that you develop, then we say that the market is validated, the product is manufacturing ready. In fact, you demonstrated that by a first series, and your main goal is to grow the company. So how do you go from 1 sale to 200 sales or 200,000 sales a year? So the entire focus is on growth. From an investment perspective, or how do you fund these different companies? Well, in the early stages, when you are developing that, typically you are going to use non-dilutive funding. So that means those will be grants, for instance. There is lots of funding from public institutions that help develop these initial phases, and that doesn't take equity on your company. In fact, probably there's not a company being developed yet. In the second stage, there is going to be a mix of competitive funding, depending on where you are at different levels, regional, national, even at European level. We have several instruments for very early stage companies. So companies that maybe they are less than 2 years old, that still develop technologies, and they can apply for some of these non-dilutive funding. But we can start using already private funding. So business angels, so people that they have some money and they are willing to invest individually, or some family offices. And also there are some other instruments to fund, like it could be credit. At the end of the day, there are some financial institutions that they develop specific lines of credit that will be soft loans for new startups. And a combination of those is used typically in that stage. And finally, once you are growing, you validated that you have a market, that people is willing to buy your product, and that you have a product, a technology that is mature in order to be commercialized. Basically, you're going to be funding that growth phase through private funding. That's family offices, that's venture capital. And I will say that especially for industrial tech startups, corporate investment, so that will be corporate funds. Nowadays, all major industrial companies run their own corporate venture capital instrument. We are talking BASF has a 250 million fund. Siemens has its own fund. Philips has its own fund. Most major industrial companies run their own funds, and it's a great source of funding for growth, but it's also a great way to connect with potential clients. What we observed at stage 2, and not only at the stage 2 now, but through these all these years supporting science-based and engineering-based startups, is that although the entire process is a challenging one, there is a phase, there is an area in which it's critical for the development and the success of the company. And you may guess, but this area is what goes in stage 2, if you want. So actually, how do you go from having a validated technology that we know it's innovative, we assume that it's solving a problem, but we don't have any sale yet, so we then validate the market. How do we go from that technology that has lots of potential to a first industrialized series and a market that is validated? So this is critical. This is where most of science and engineering-based startups get stuck. And that also makes sense because the first stage is receiving lots of support. At the end of the day, universities and technological centers, even programs from local governments, provide support on the initial areas, but when it comes to industrialization, when it comes to go to the factory, actually this vanishes, and it's very difficult to advance there. So when a startup is reaching that point, this is exactly the kind of moment that we want to talk today. When the startup is reaching that point in which has a validated technology and needs to industrialize, is going to face challenges, many challenges. But I think that at the end of the day, we can summarize those challenges in four areas, or four main challenges. The first challenge that you're going to encounter is industrialization. So at this point, you have a functional prototype, and maybe that functional prototype is invalidated in the lab, so you're at TRL 4, or even you validated this prototype in the real environment, so you already reached the TRL 5, and you have one unit. This is a huge milestone, by the way. So chances are that your prototype, it fulfills the goal of validating a technology, but chances are that your prototype didn't take into account all the design requirements to make it manufacturable, to make it able to go into production line. And chances are that neither health and safety requirements were taken into account. So at the end of the day, you can receive a certification that will allow you to commercialize that product. Going from prototype to manufacturing ready stage requires planning. It requires documentation. and lots of meetings with potential suppliers and contract manufacturers. Not to mention that most manufacturers and most contract manufacturers won't even be willing to take a request for a quotation from you if they realize that you're a first-time hardware entrepreneur with no previous experience. And the reason for that is that they're going to consider that you're going to generate them more problems than not benefits. At the end of the day, contract manufacturers, they tend to have the pipeline of projects covered, and they may end up choosing with whom they want to work, and they want to work with people that they know what they are talking about and they have a previous experience. So it's very important as a first-time hardware entrepreneur to knock the door of contract manufacturers with the homework done, showing that although it may be the first time that you're developing a hardware startup, you did your homework. You have your documentation ready. You have clear your path to certification. You have your economics in place, so you are able to take that challenge on board. So when you knock the door, they realize that you are reliable. It may be the first time that you're doing that, but that you did what it takes in order to present yourself in a proper manner. The second challenge is about market validation. And what do we mean by market validation? Well, the big question is that, is anyone willing to pay for your product or service? And you may think so. You may have the suspicion, you may have the hypothesis that there is people that are willing to buy your product. But chances are that at that stage, no one did yet. So as long as no one bought your product, you have no proof that there is a demand or that you're generating value for a specific user, for a specific case. So market validation means sales. Market validation means that you convince someone to buy your product. And this is key. I will say this is something I explained before, but when we are in that stage 2, when we're in this stage in which we have a functional prototype, when we have for sales and so on, from a funding perspective, and especially from a private funding perspective, is very challenging, because those private investors that they may invest in industrial tech companies, in hardware and science-based companies, they tend to invest in companies that they have a first series, even if it's a short series in the market, so the technology is validated, that they have the market validated, they have a first sale, so they don't take the risk earlier than that. So for you, it's very important to convince someone to pay for your product and service. And this sale can take many shapes. It can be a very small order. It can be a pilot program that is a paid pilot program. It can be some consulting service, but it's using your technology to deliver the final result. It takes lots of preparations to get that first sale. It's about defining your value proposition. It's about identifying the client. It's about defining who is the buyer within the organization that you're selling. What are the decision times? Under what conditions the client gets new suppliers in? This whole sales strategy needs to be developed in order to get that first sale. You may be lucky and actually, without doing any of that, in a very random way, get the first client. Yes, that can happen. That's not the most common thing to happen. So typically, sales is difficult, it's hard, especially the first sale. It's hard, and you need to prepare for that. You need to plan for that. So, and especially, probably, I'm guessing many of you have a technical background. So sales, it doesn't really come naturally to you. So more reason in order to prepare to that. And that brings us to the next challenge, that it's a team composition. Probably, if you are in the phases that we were talking before, you're still a small team. You are 2 to 4 people. And hopefully you are with full-time dedication. Maybe half of the team has full-time dedication, half of the team has part-time dedication. And most of the team, if not all, has a technical background. You are really good at technology development and product development. In fact, you reach the level that you reach because of that, because you are good at technological development and product development. But as we saw, technology is a requirement, but it's insufficient for your industrial tech company to go beyond the prototype phase. To break that barrier, we need a team that it has already other ingredients complementing the technical ingredient. You need a balanced team that it takes, if you want 3 different roles, you need the technical role, you need the people that it's good at solving a problem and it's good at the technology, but you also need the business development role. So someone that is developing how are we going to commercialize that, how we're going to make money, how is the path between now and the moment we're able to sell, how are we going to fund that. Is about having relationships with different stakeholders. And also you need the market approach, is about how to present this to others to make it appealing. So if your team is all technical, the CEO can grow the business hat. And in fact, this is not for everyone, but when this happens, when you have a technical CEO that through studying, through experience, and through its own character is able to grow the business hat, this is a winning project. So this is a very good thing to happen. But it's also important to realize that it's not for everyone to take that role, and not everyone can do everything. So if the currency of the company has a technical profile and doesn't feel very comfortable with business-related areas, it may be a good idea to consider to bring in someone that has experience on this area to complement the team. And of course, you don't need to have all the roles within the company, especially at this stage. Lots of things can be subcontracted. Lots of things can be externalized, and that goes from accounting, and that goes from some communication activities, and it can go to applying to public funding. So as much as you can subcontract things, but some roles like the technical roles, the business development and the strategy business roles, and the market related roles, those are important to have in-house. Those you must have in-house if you want this to be a successful venture. Of course, you may subcontract even some technological development to a technology center, but that has to be coordinated and supervised by someone within the core team that is, at the end of the day, the person that is responsible for this area. So at that stage, we recommend you to quickly analyze your capacities and evaluate if you have the technical and market perspective to make it happen. Before we change the challenge, then it's also important to realize that team composition is important, but operations are important. At the very early phases of your venture, everyone does everything. All responsibilities are shared, even all the roles are shared. However, it's relevant to define each member core responsibility and boundaries, and set processes that will help you grow your venture efficiently. The earlier you set operations, the easiest is going to be to scale up your venture. The next challenge is growth. The fourth challenge is growth. And that might not be the case, but experience tell us that in many occasions, early stage industrial tech entrepreneurs they think that their market is local, the market is national. And when they think about who they are going to sell and where they're going to have operations, they think of the national market. But actually, growth is about thinking internationally. And the same goes for funding. Your roadmap for funding, probably now it has 1 year, 2 years. You're thinking 1 year, 2 years ahead on how to fund the company, or even shorter. But growth is about many things. We observe that growth for industrial tech startups, it's mainly about having a well-defined internationalization strategy and a well-defined mid to long-term funding strategy. Internationalization is key for growth. It's about realizing that you are a global company from day one. Even if you're a small company, even if you are 3 people working from the garage or from the lab, you have to think that your market is global from day one. And in our case, I will say at least your market should be Europe, if not global. And that means to develop an internationalization strategy. That means strategic planning. That means deciding where do you want to operate? Where do you want to sell? Where do you want to do it? And where does it make sense? How do you set up priorities? But also it means about defining what strategy you're going to use to internationalize. Are you going to open a commercial office? Are you partner with someone locally? Are you moving some part of your manufacturing to that location? It's about licensing models with a local partner. There are lots of things to take into account when thinking about internationalization. To be in your home country and get an international order from somewhere else, that's not internationalization. That's a client that happens to find your product and you're selling. Internationalization is a proactive and a conscious choice that requires planning and a plan to make it happen. And the same happens to funding. At the end of the day, you are a hardware startup. You're going to need more capital than the traditional digital, 100% digital startups. And you need to plan well ahead of time. Because maybe at that stage you are now, you may think that with 200K, 300K, $500,000, you can overcome the next milestone, and that's going to take you very far. But chances are between the moment you are today and the moment you're going to be able to sustain the operations of the company through sales is going to take lots of time. I will say minimum 7 to 8 years, if not 10 years. So that's what we mean by planning well ahead, mid and long term, how you're going to fund that development and how you're going to fund the different stages and who is going to be the right source of funding for each stage. Again, this requires proper planning and thinking years ahead. So at stage 2, we've seen industrial tech startups face those challenges again and again. And that's why we decided to develop a program that specifically targets them and targets those challenges. So what is a stage 2? Stage 2 is a venture-backed acceleration program for early-stage industrial tech ventures. So a mouthful of words here. So what do we mean? So basically, we are a fund. In fact, at that moment, we are finalizing setting up the fund. We are setting up a 15 million fund to invest in early-stage industrial tech companies. But this is very important because you have to understand we are looking at opportunities, at projects from an investor perspective. What we do is that we get into the company, we take equity on the company through cash and through sweat equity model. We can talk about this later on. And once we are part of the company, typically with a minority stake, we provide a set of services. In fact, we provide a very intensive and thoughtfully designed program to help those startups overcome the 4 challenges that you just saw and that we just spoke about. But we don't do this for everyone. We do this for a very specific set of companies. We do that for hardware-based startups that they already have a functional prototype, that they are in very early stages of development, and that probably they are pre-revenue. We spoke about that kind of ventures. So what do we aim? What do we aim with our program? So what we aim is to help you go through a transformation. We want you to go from A to B, or if you want to be more specific, if we go back on the slides, we want you to go from that TRL4, that TRL5 to TRL6. We want you to go from a functional prototype to a manufacturing ready stage. So you have everything it needs in order to knock the door of contract manufacturers and sign deals with suppliers and contract manufacturers and have your first industrialized series available. We want you to help you do a transformation from being pre-revenue, so have no orders, have no one paying for your product and services, to have initial market validation. And we are doing that in many ways, but basically we have a large network of large industrial companies that at the end of the day, they are your clients that help us do that. And we're gonna help you develop those initial orders, those initial paid pilot programs with those clients. We want to help you go from probably a product-oriented team to a well-structured and a well-balanced team that can take the challenges that are coming ahead. And finally, we want to help you go from a short-term strategy kind of mindset, maybe that you're planning like months, a year ahead, maybe no more than 2 years ahead, to think more like 5-7 years ahead, because the big challenges that we are talking about are going to take longer than you anticipated, and it's good that you prepare for that. And that should bring growth, definitely. This is a 6-month program that is happening both on-site and online. So we are located in Barcelona, in Spain, and I can tell a bit more about where we are located, the kind of premises that we are in. But for this 6-month program, there are 4 weeks that happen on-site, and they are very intensive weeks, Monday to Friday, 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening. Those weeks take place on-site. The rest of the program, then it's a bit up to you. You can decide to join us on a daily basis. We'll give you access to working space, and we'll give you access to workshops and to tools. You can work even on your product, or can also happen online, remotely. And actually, every week there are going to be support and activities. Every other week you're going to have a one-to-one mentoring session with us, with the Stage 2 programs, with myself and with Miriam Segura, with other members of the team. And the rest of the time you're going to receive support from the different people that take part in the program, working specifically on the challenges that you're facing. We are located in an industrial space in Barcelona. Is a former warehouse, 650 square meters, where we have our own workshop and access to tools and machinery in order to, you can make noise, you can make things dirty, and you can work on your product if that's required. But also we have tables and chairs and a space to work and meet. The program, I think one of the assets is a large network of heads of innovation from large industrial companies. Over the years, we've been building a community of more than 90 heads of innovation from all kinds of sectors and different verticals, that they help us in many ways, but actually they help you connect to them, validate the market, and actually help you grow. I think there is a lot of value in there. And most of our mentors are coming from that network. And then we also have a massive network of suppliers and contract manufacturers. Over the years, we sign agreements with different associations of manufacturers. And part of the program is that we identify your manufacturing needs to the detail. We identify your manufacturing needs from a component perspective, but also from a contract manufacturing perspective. And we launch a call amongst thousands of suppliers. And what we do is to accelerate for you the process to identify contract manufacturers and suppliers. Finally, our current model, our aim is to finish to have that 15 million fund closed by the end of the year. But still, for this second edition of the program, we are using a sweat equity model. So basically, we're evaluating our services in an amount, is 50K, and the kind of agreement we have with you is that you come to the program, we provide all the support, and in the next capital increase that you're going to have, we are going to get into the company at that 50K contribution in services. And the amount of equity we take, it depends on the valuation of the company. It's not defined by us. Actually, it's going to be defined by you. So those are the characteristics of the program. And also, how does it look the day-to-day? So it's a very intensive program, I have to say. When you are with us, aside of running the company, you are going to work a lot, but we promise that this is going to deliver a proper output that's going to be in order to help you grow. But there are four main elements. So basically, we're running lots of hands-on workshops on the four areas that we mentioned. So we have workshops on pricing strategies. We have workshops on setting up your internationalization strategy. We have workshops on certification. We have workshops on getting ready for manufacturing and preparing your documentation for manufacturing. We have workshops on all these areas. And by workshops, we mean is that someone can explain and provide some basics, but we work case by case on your needs. This is supported with mentoring sessions. You get assigned an in-house mentor, someone that long-standing experience in the sector you are working on. So if it happens that you're developing, I don't know, an electric engine for motorcycles, chances are that next to you, you're going to have someone that has been working for 20 plus years developing and selling small electric engines for large companies. Or if you're developing a medical device on a specific area, chances are that either there's going to be some health head of innovation from a company interested on that area assigned as your in-house mentor, or someone that has brought a product that is similar or in similar line to the market and has been going through the hustle. So mentoring takes that shape. Mentoring also means one-on-one sessions with the different specialists we have on the different areas. The third element is the factory connection. As we said, we do a very artisan process, if you want, in order to find suppliers and contract manufacturers, but we also do quite some factory visits. Chances are that you need to deal with electronics. We go to visit PCB manufacturers, so we understand what it takes to design and develop PCBs at large scale. Chances are that you need some mechanics and in your product. We're going to look for companies that can help develop that, or injection molding. So we go to visit, we spend a full day with manufacturers in order to get a real understanding what does it take when you reach that level to make it happen. And something that we are also very happy is that at the end of the day, we have a very large community of founders that already brought similar products to yours to the market. And every day that we have a program, those are coming over to visit us, and they dedicate a couple of hours to sit with you and to explain how did they develop what they develop. And this is a great opportunity to connect with people that did it before you, and these people that is willing to give back. And it's a great way to connect to a community of industrial tech ventures. Now, yes, now I'm happy to show you this very short clip that I recorded this morning in a conversation with Alicia Martinez Piñeiro, CEO and founder of Time is Brain, that has joined us in this 22 cohort that is ready to finish. And I asked her how it's been the experience so far. Hi, Alicia. Thanks for joining us today. Founder of a medtech startup that is called Time is Brain that actually joined the 2022 Stage 2 cohort. So thanks for joining us, Alicia, today. Can you briefly tell us what is Time is Brain?
Thank you, Oriol, and thanks for the opportunity. Yes, of course, Time is Brain is a medtech and technology-based startup found from German Trias Hospital. Time is Brain co-founders are neurologists, including myself, and what we are doing is a medical device to improve the outcome of stroke patients.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, the rationale or the base of Time is Brain is actually a science project. We discovered 2 years ago, thanks to a clinical trial, then a wave that arises from our brain can help the healthcare staff to take better and faster decisions and to monitor continuously the brain from the stroke symptoms onset and during the entire stroke patient journey. So we validate this technology with this clinical trial, and then what we are doing now is to develop a point-of-care medical device, adjust to the user's requirement to implement this technology in the standard of care of stroke.
And can you tell us a little bit what kind of challenges you had before joining the program?
So yeah, mostly technological and also commercialization challenges. Since Time is Brain co-founders, we are neurologists, so for us, this wording or technical wording regarding engineering at the beginning was really tough to deal with. We join our engineers, join our team, but despite the support from these engineers and also subcontractors, at the beginning we were a little bit lost regarding the right partners to conduct the technological development, the timing of this technological development, the strategy of potential industrialization, and also from the commercial point of view, which strategy will be the best, how to approach the market access. So a lot of questions and open questions came, and we were a little bit scared at the beginning since we are scientists, but we were really motivated and convinced about our invention, and that's helped us to move forward.
Oh, that's great. And can you tell us a little bit in which way you think that Stage 2 has been helping you so far?
So I already tell you or tell everybody this, no? But I'm really happy to be in Stage 2 program because you were right. You deliver what you promised. You promised to support the roadmap from a prototype to industrialization phase, and also to provide a whole support, no, in the work packages of the project. Mostly with this industrialization, and actually you deliver what you promise, because not only the mentoring or the tailored mentoring that you provide to us, but also the suppliers and other stakeholders from the point of view of industrialization were really critical. They were fine. So when we knocked the door, the answer was what we expected, and these help us to move faster and to solve problems that we have. Problems as to design this manufacturing strategy, to have an updated and a mature wall of materials, really practical things, not only theoretical. So this is really great.
I'm glad to hear. Thanks so much for your compliments. And finally, who do you think can benefit from joining a program like the Stage 2 Acceleration Program?
Mostly projects or startups, companies that has an invention or product based on or with a hardware component, also software, but it is really important to have a hardware component, and that has a prototype functional or that would be close to have a functional prototype. And they are also designing the industrialization of the product, and also designing other topics, other work packages as the IP strategy or the commercialization strategy, but mostly to move forward in the industrialization phase or technological development.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Actually, we are very happy to have companies like Time is Brain part of the Stage 2 portfolio. And we continue working together. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. No, thanks to the Stage 2 program. Thank you.
All right. So, well, thank you very much, Alicia, for your comments. We are very happy to have startups like Time is Brain. They are developing breakthrough technologies that they're going to help, in that case, people that suffer brain stroke to do a proper tracking as this is happening and provide the right treatment for them to reduce the damage. So we are coming to the end. So what is it that we are looking for at Stage 2? What kind of companies we are looking to provide support, especially because we think we can provide value. So as we've been mentioning all the time, so we are looking for hardware-based startups, physical product. Our experience tells us that in most occasions, not always, but in most occasions, that involves software and intelligence and so on and so forth. So someone asked about that previously. The combination is okay. What we are not interested is in purely digital companies, and the reason is that we believe there are many other people that can help there. So these companies should own the technology. If you want, maybe the technology is not owned by them because it's actually coming from a research center, but they should be the innovativeness, the inventionness should come from the core team, and it's been transferred, if you want, for them, and it can be protected. Our focus is European. We are providing support to startups from all over Europe. That's what we are focusing at. We need this hardware to have a certain level of validation, so a TRL 4, TRL 5. So part of the process is that we're going to ask you, show us what you got. And if it happens that you're reaching the final phases of the selection process, we are going to ask, bring it and show it to us. And doesn't matter if it's ugly, doesn't matter if it's partially, not okay. But definitely we are not interested on opportunities that they can only show a render, for instance, or a video. We want to see that the technology is there. We are looking for startups also that they have a full-time committed team. That means two things. That means that it should be more than one person in the company. We are not providing support to solo entrepreneurs. And there is a reason, and is that it's very difficult to make it happen. So at least the bare minimum should be 2 people full-time committed, and ideally it will be more like 3-4 people. Ideally it will be 3-4 people full-time committed. And sometimes you guys ask us, do we need to be incorporated? Do we need to be a company already by the time you're joining the program? It's not necessarily by the time you join the program, but definitely by the end of the year, you should be incorporated, or it should be part of the process of being with us to make this incorporation happen. So almost final slide. to give you an idea of the calendar. And again, you're going to receive a PDF with all the details, but we have a call open now for industrial tech startups from all over Europe. The call closes on the 26th of February. So we still have almost 4 weeks time to apply. You can do that through our platform at F-Success. The easiest way actually is go to stage2.cc. That's our website, and from there to access that. By the 10th of April, we're going to finalize the selection process. And just to give you an idea, the previous cohort, we identified 300 opportunities and more than 80 opportunities applied. And of those, 4 made it to the final cut. So with that, what I want to say is that there is a competitive process. We are looking for opportunities that they have potential, and we take it very seriously. The selection process is something that it takes different phases, and we involve lots of people that they are looking to the opportunities. And if you make it to the final phase, there is an in-depth due diligence taking place at every single level. If you make it to that cut, the next cohort, the 2023 cohort, starts on May 15th. That's on May 15th. That will be on site in Barcelona, and it's going to be running till November 15th. And we're finishing with a demo day where we're inviting the community to take part, and we want to show how much the projects have grown during that time period. So now this is the last slide. What will be next steps? So as we mentioned at the beginning, you're going to receive an email right at the end of this webinar with a PDF with all the program details. So it's full of information, and we invite you to take a look to it. On the same email, you will get the chance to book one-on-one meetings with Miriam Segura, program director at the Stage 2, and even myself, to clarify any further issues. And again, a reminder that through stage2.cc, through our website, you can apply till the 26th of February. So I hope that that provides some clarification. And as promised, it's time for some Q&A. And we've been getting questions. Let me look at this. And I'm happy to answer some of these questions. Some questions that came today are the following. Is there any cost to be part of the accelerator? Okay, so actually the acceleration program doesn't cost money financially. We don't charge you. What we do is to invest in you. So what we do is that we take equity. It's another form of cost, but we don't ask you for money. Actually, we take a little piece of equity, and it's going to depend on the valuation of the company. But to give you a rough estimation, between 3%, 5%, 6% of the company, depending on the valuation that you have. I hope that answers the question. Then we have another question. How many team members can be allowed into the program? Well, that's a good one. We welcome as many as possible. And I think that's a very good question. Ideally, you are going to get most profit of this when beyond the CEO of the company is joining the program. And in fact, we've seen this again and again. Those startups in which 2 or 3 members are joining the sessions, they take way more profit of it, and they advance way quicker than those that they send someone, and even sometimes a different person between sessions. In fact, this is something we don't allow anymore. We don't allow that different sessions are joined by different people. They should at least always be the CEO joining, and then you're gonna get lots of value when other team members join. And there is a big reason for that, is that you don't need to go back to your company and explain the kind of thinking process that you went through. that thinking happens together with your teammates on site, and you come to realizations as the program is evolving. So it's strongly recommended that you bring as many people as you come. Now that I say that, also a little detail, when you are with us, you are worry-free. You come in the morning, there is breakfast, there is lunch cover. If we move around, there is transportation moving us around. So, and it doesn't matter if it's one person joining, it's 3 persons joining, or 5 people joining for each company. All this is included. Then we have another question from Ahim. I'm getting the impression that you have a focus in high-tech hardware where electronics and software meet. Do you have any reference in chemical engineering, processing tech of liquid and gases, targeting climate tech? And do you have an industrial network in that area? Ahim, that's a very good question. I have to say that's not where our strength is. As you said, our strength is on hardware. That may be a combination of hardware and software. When it's more about new materials, or it's more about chemical engineering, we understand that this is more about developing innovative processes. It's not so much about an innovative product that needs manufacturing, but it's more about a process. This is not where our strength relies, and is not how we design the program. However, we are aware of people that can help in this area. And I will say that privately, you can send us a message. We are happy to look into that and to point you to some organizations in Europe that can support a venture that is in chemical engineering. Anna is asking, hello, we would like to produce components for a time synchronization device for telecom industry, 5G, 6G, communication between data centers. It does not fit to any of the market verticals presented here. Can we still apply for the program? Yeah, good question, Anna. Yes, you can. I will say we are transversal. As long as you have hardware that has a proprietary technology and it needs manufacturing, that's something that we are looking into and we're interested. We presented some verticals in order to provide a bit of clarification, but the reality is that we are transversal to many verticals, and we didn't include telecommunications as one, but you fulfill the criteria to apply to our program. So the answer is yes. And finally, does Europe mean EU only, or is Switzerland included? That's a good one. We are talking about continental Europe. So Switzerland is included. That's not a problem. Yes, the answer is yes, Switzerland is included. So I hope that this, with that, you're getting your questions asked. As I see, well, we promised 1 hour, it's been 1 hour 20. So sorry for making it a bit longer. Sorry also for the little inconvenience, the little bit of a cough attack. Thank you everyone for joining us, and it's been a pleasure to be with you today. We're going to finish the webinar right now. You're going to get that email, and we're going to share a recording of that webinar online so you can access this later on. So thank you very much. Have a good day, and remember, the call is open till February 26. Bye.